There we go. So, good morning. Happy Thursday, as I am joining you from, oh my gosh, New Hampshire. Cold, cold snow, but beautiful. And Kristen, who is a collaborative attorney, is my guest this morning, who is still in Florida enjoying the warm weather and sending me some sunshine from there. And wanted to take a moment to introduce you to Kristen. Um, it's cool, actually. That really the difference in our name is the N and the L. Small little detail, but it's fun. Um, anyways, Kristen and I met at the NED, which is the National Association of Divorce Professional. I'm a member of the group, which is the French National Group. And Kristen, which chapter are you in?
So now I'm just a member of NADP. I'm not part of a chapter.
You didn't want to do the 7 o'clock one? Wasn't there one at 7 in the morning? I think there's one based on the seven
There
for
was
breakfast.
one. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Um, so I wanted to go ahead and talk about NADP briefly, because we're both members. And NADP, one of the reasons why I joined 2019 is because it was a great way to connect with professionals who are helping clients who are experiencing divorce, going through a separation, going through divorce. And myself, as a child, went through my parents' divorce. And then as an adult, I divorced about 5 years ago. And with the NED, I like the fact that they had professionals gathering, getting together so they can collaborate. And there are four pillars in the NEDP: the legal system, so helping with the legal aspect of when someone is going through a divorce, the financial aspect, so they're going to have CPAs, they're going to have forensic CPAs, really to help with those big cases where they need someone to go deep dive into the numbers, and the residential. So that's going to be my part, a realtor, and of course, legal. I did not go into detail because I want Kristen and I to go more into that. And the mental health is going to be psychologist, it's going to be a coach, it's going to be a career coach. When somebody is going through a divorce, sometimes they may not have had a job and now they might have to go back to the workforce. So they need somebody to translate their skills and their abilities to now find a new job. So a lot of coaches also participate in those type of associations because it's a great place to help empower. Because there's one thing going through divorce, but to me, for me, the biggest thing when I went through my divorce was having a community to help me move forward and grow and heal from that aspect of, yes, there's divorce, there's the grief, there's the pain, but there's a new possibility out there. Which is when
Mhm,
I moved to actually Florida, and I loved it.
mhm.
Uh, but now, in the aspect of the legal, which is why I wanted Kristen to share, because when I went through my divorce, I, although I personally did not have an attorney, I just reviewed the documents and I agree with the terms because it was a pretty easy process. I don't think I would have thought about, okay, let me look for a collaborative attorney. Let me look for a litigation attorney. Like, I think I would have just gone through an ad that would have popped up and said, maybe this is a good person or the amount. So, Kristen, what are the types of divorce attorneys that people can um, meet or contract to, and I'm not using necessarily the best legal terms for this, but really hire to help them through their process? What are the types of attorneys?
Absolutely. So I think the best way to answer you, and first and foremost, thank you so much for your time and for having me, Christelle.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say to really look at it as what are your options? And so when someone is contemplating a divorce, they don't really know. It's a lot that you have to think about, and you're seeking help and assistance. And when you come to me as a lawyer, you're seeking legal advice. And so when a potential client comes to me, I provide them with their options. What are their options? You can decide to do the traditional litigation route by filing your petition in court, and everything is handled through court. If you're not able to come up with an agreement, we would have to take it to trial. The judge would decide. So I do have litigation cases that, you know, that's the route we take. Another option would be mediation. So mediation can be in various forms. There are times where people decide to do what they call co-mediation. So there could be attorneys involved, there could not be attorneys involved, but if it's the mediation process. It's all about negotiation strategies to help resolve whatever legal interest that they have outside of court. Oftentimes, mediation is a step before going to trial and litigation. So if it's that route, it's a little bit different, but still the idea is for the clients to make decisions to resolve without having to go to trial. Then you have the uncontested, I call simplified divorce. A lot of times just sitting at a table and, it would be the spouses getting together and deciding, okay, we don't have many assets or we do have assets, but this is how we're going to resolve things.
Right.
And
And that was
oftentimes attorneys are not involved in the process. And then you have the collaborative process, which is something that I really, really advocate for, being both on the litigation side as well as a collaboratively trained marital and family law attorney. I see the both, opposites of the spectrum. And I would have to say, my philosophy is family law does not belong in court. I love our court system, and I do believe that there are reasons and benefits for taking things to court. But when families are involved, especially children, it's best to resolve outside of court. And so through the collaborative process, it enables the clients really to make decisions for themselves. Each of them would have, when I say each of them, the spouses would each have a collaboratively trained attorney, ideally, to represent their legal interests. And as you mentioned, Christelle, it's more holistic because we do bring on professionals such as yourself, especially when there's a marital home involved. How is that going to be resolved? Is it going to be refinanced? Is it going to be sold, et cetera? What are the options here? When there are children involved, we bring on a mental health professional. Oftentimes that person serves as a neutral facilitator, so they're not representing or advocating for one spouse or the other. They're really just helping the team as a whole, including myself as an attorney, because sometimes you can be positional, and they call it the paradigm shift that you do have to make in the collaborative process to really allow the clients to make decisions. You can advise and say, here are your options.
Right.
This is what would likely happen if we were to go to court, and allow the client to make the final decision. So that neutral facilitator and mental health professional with their expertise comes into play and can really help us stay in line and focus on the interests of everybody involved. So
I have a
that's
question on that.
another part.
When you say
Sure.
the mental professional, what kind of mental professional would it be? Doesn't sound like it would be necessarily a coach. Would it be more of psychologist or psychiatrist? I mean, what level of mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So psychologists normally, or a family and marital counselor
Okay.
could serve in that role. We do also something new in Florida, or newer in Florida, is a child specialist.
Hmm.
So that particular role is more so focused on the child or the children's interests and bringing their voice to the process. Because a lot of times when we're going through the process with the clients, we're focusing on what their interests are, what their goals are, what their fears are. And sometimes, especially when children are involved, the children are overlooked. So that child specialist can come in and really bring the child's voice into the situation without having the children be part of the process. Because, of course, we want them to be protected as much as possible. And then you have the neutral financial professional that can come in and help with the financial piece of everything. How are the assets and debts going to be divided? Is alimony going to be allotted? What's the child support going to look like? So we all work together as a team, and it's very interest-based negotiation strategies and allowing the clients to make decisions for themselves, not just for today, but looking at the future. How is this going to look after the divorce is over? How are we going to move forward in a positive direction?
Awesome. And I think that's very important because the team effort, because if a client comes to refinance or purchase a new house, but their agreement was not looked at by a lender, there's a
Mhm,
good possibility that they may or may not qualify because the child support um, maybe for a child who's 15. And when a child is
mhm,
15, we won't be able to use that income. But in a collaborative, if there's communication, okay, well, you have two kids or you have three. How about if we split the child support in this amount so that you're able to qualify and help you move forward versus finding yourself surprised? Oh, I can't use that income because my child is 15. And a lot of
mm,
parents don't know that. I actually had a presentation yesterday that the attorney said, but what is that rule? That's one of the rules, it's one of the guidelines. So we just have to go by that. And sometimes clients think, well, my child is going to go to college, it's going to continue. It's going to be very difficult to prove to an underwriter that the child is going to go to, is going to continue unless it's in writing. It's going to be exactly through a certain date, which very often
mm,
that it states, I believe, until 18 or graduate from high school. So that's the
mhm,
mindset when it comes to, or the guideline is when a child is 15, we cannot use that anymore. And for the child support, we
mhm,
also, I'm sorry, alimony, we have to be able to document it's going to continue for 3 years from closing. So if you're working with a client and you doing all those terms that they know they're going to be buying another house, but they did not calculate it, say, well, I'm just going to receive for 1 year and it's a large amount. You may want to actually extend it for 3 years with an amount that actually still works. So all
mhm.
that is part of why NADP and collaborative with professionals will come into the picture to help create agreements that work for win-wins. That's the way I see, and that's why I really like the aspect of collaborative attorney because
That's
I get involved.
awesome. Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes.
Yeah.
And I can definitely understand and relate and appreciate the work that people like you, professionals such as yourself, do because, yeah, like I'm not in your industry. So, there are a lot of things, again, working
You
as
get
a
what I know?
team is
Hmm.
beneficial because you can bring out those things that you see on a daily basis to really help us avoid hiccups
Right,
down the road.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. When it comes to time frames, what would is it? It's not a guarantee. However, is there
Mhm.
shorter term because collaborative is conversation between attorneys who are both collaborative attorneys with a team? Is that a shorter time frame than going to court and filing? What is the time frame that someone can expect when it comes to collaborative versus another type of filing?
Absolutely. So you stated it correctly. There is no one size fits all or this is the time frame per se. What I could say is based on my experience in the cases that I've had that have been collaborative versus litigation, on average, my litigated cases last a year and a half to 2 years on average,
Mm,
oftentimes, longer than that. Um, Opposed to my collaborative cases, the longest I had, and it was everything in the kitchen sink thrown at you in that case, was 8 months. So, generally
mm,
speaking,
mm,
collaborative cases last a lot less. They take less time. It's more streamlined because you have meetings, set meetings, and the meetings are no longer for everyone involved, no longer than 2 hours. Of course, the professionals, we have our pre-brief before the clients are brought in and our debrief after the official meeting. But it's very streamlined when we're meeting. We have an agenda that's sent in advance. So, people know what we're going to be discussing
right.
prior to the meeting ending. Everyone has homework to do and you have to get the homework done by a certain time. So it's very streamlined.
Does it take a special couple that's divorcing to actually choose collaborative? Because when people go through divorce at times, even though there might be a desire to be amicable in the future, in the moment communication may not be the best. Um, and the fact that they both need to be collaborative attorneys, how would someone bring, like, let's say I'm going through thinking there's a divorce coming up for me, and I would love to work with someone like you, Kristen, who's collaborative attorney, but my spouse is so animated to litigation. Like, how can you bridge that gap?
So I tell my clients all the time, The only person you can control is yourself. There have been times where my client has wanted the collaborative process so badly, and typically I send a letter to the other spouse inviting them to the collaborative process and a website that they could go to find out more information and to choose an attorney who's collaboratively trained of their choice. But, a lot of times mistrust is in the mix, and receiving a letter from the spouse that they are soon going to be ex-spouses from, that person's attorney might not, be so receptive. Sometimes I have a neutral person, such as yourself, make a call to the other spouse and explain the collaborative process. Depending if there are significant assets involved, they might have a neutral financial person speak to them, or if there are concerns involving the children, I might have a neutral facilitator, such as a psychologist or a marriage and family counselor, reach out. But at the end of the day, if the other spouse doesn't want to participate, then it is what it is. And we have to, seek another alternative, to, get to the end goal. But what I would say, it doesn't take necessarily a special person to enter into the collaborative process. It's about accountability, that because collaborative is not easy by any means, because if it were easy, then they wouldn't need the professionals. They could just resolve on their own. A lot of times it's really high conflict situations that we are addressing. But the difference is both spouses are willing to commit to the process and work it out and resolve, and they're resolution focused no matter what. They're committed no matter what. So that's what it
You
takes.
were the commitments, right?
Yeah.
The commitments. Got it. All right. So let's see what else I had as far as notes. I mean, I would definitely encourage. I'm into the win-win in everything. So I feel like collaborative is more of, even though it may not feel like a win at first, the fact that it's commitment to get through that step together, or where it's best interest looked at and worked through, sounds so more peaceful in the long run.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Lauren. So, and I agree with you. It's like someone like myself is like, well, I've spoken with collaborative attorney with this process. It's probably going to be best for you. And someone who's not necessarily an attorney title would definitely come probably softer, uh, addressing the other spouse about the situation. Got it. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, as Kristen, what else would you add with somebody who's going through a divorce that they should know? Like they're contemplating, like, this is the end for it. I don't see the end of the tunnel with this marriage. It's time for me to seek legal advice. What would you tell is the first step for someone to do that? Would be to call you, to do a class online? Because I know before COVID there were classes like a whole day, like first time home buyer who will go through a whole day seminar to understand so much of what's going on in the process of purchasing a home. What would be the first step you would encourage someone to take when they're considering divorce?
I would say definitely speak to an attorney, and if you get a sense in the consultation that the attorney is not providing you with options, that's a red flag.
Mm,
We are ethically obligated to provide potential clients with all their options, because how are they supposed to choose what they feel is best for them without providing them with the options? And so that's the starting point, I would say, so that, for me, it's at least an hour-long consultation where we go into depth as far as here are options that are available to you.
mhm.
And then we also address, what are your goals? What are your fears? So that's something to definitely consider. Also, nowadays in a technology land, there are a lot of things that are online as far as webinars. I know that I have something coming up April 19th. It has not been publicized yet, but it's going to be the nuts and bolts of divorce in Florida. And that's going to be a virtual webinar, and
And it's
also
open
for the
open to the
professionals.
public?
It's open to the public, it's open to professionals. There will be 4.5 CLEs that will be provided. So for attorneys who especially are in need of mental health credits as well as ethics credits, that's something to be on the lookout for. So there are a lot of those where you have attorneys that are providing, and I would be working with, I don't know if you know Bianca Moreras. She's
The name sounds familiar, but
like a business coach. She would be moderating. I have Tammy Berman. She is a licensed marriage and family counselor, mental health professional.
mhm.
And then I have a CFP, Philip Hersberg, that will be also collaborating. We're going to be collaborating together to provide some insight on different options in highlighting the collaborative process and how that works and how we work as a team. So that's something to be on the lookout for. There was something else I was going to mention. Oh, yes. So I am a member as well as on the board of the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals,
Mhm.
and they have divorce options. I am not going to speak on it because I would be, I would think a little uneducated about what that's all about in detail.
Mhm.
But it's my understanding that it's something that is presented to the public, that, various practice groups who, are working together, professionals that are
Right.
collaboratively trained. We have different practice groups throughout, and actually nationwide, internationally, because it's collaborative. The collaborative process is international. But for FACP, or the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals, they have what you call divorce options. So that's something that they are trying to get all of the practice groups to be on board with.
Okay.
And from my understanding, it's a training that the professionals, different professionals, the attorneys, the mental health professionals, financial neutrals can get to be able to provide information to the public about their options, all of their options
So you're
before
on the
they
board of
make
that.
it of
Sorry,
the
Kristen.
Florida Academy of Collaborative
It's called Florida
Professional.
Academy of Professional. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I'll look for the link and put it in the comments too, so people can have the information, as well as your April 19th um, training opportunity, because it sounds like something that if it's recorded, that can be used or forwarded for someone. It's like, well, I want you to consider this option of collaborative attorney versus a litigation attorney, for them to just listen to a moderated um, talk and see if
Mm-hmm.
that fits
Mm-hmm.
them. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Great resources. Thank you. Great
Yeah.
resources. All right, Kristen, I think we covered really the bulk of what I wanted us to cover, which was a collaborative aspect. Because divorce is very difficult. Divorce is heavy, it's grief, it's a loss. I know that from experiencing it twice as a child and also as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. And actually, the one reason I think collaborative is so awesome is because my parents are divorced. However, after 30 years, their marital assets are still not split.
Oh.
Yeah. So they are currently living in division, which eventually will impact my brother and I. And the idea of that lingering for so many years, I advocate for someone to go through collaborative and get it over with type, like take the time, but know that the
Mm-hmm.
commitment is to get it completed, because now it's still part of a conversation. My
Mm.
parents have been divorced for 30 years. So it's an interesting journey for me.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did not have a voice. I did not have a person. Well, I tried to voice it myself, but that didn't go too well with my parents. Like my mother would probably listen, but my dad like, she's a kid. Um, but having, like you said, a mental professional come and advocate for a child, and give an because I've definitely had an opinion.
Mhm.
It's very nice to hear that it's an option for kids. So
Mhm.
Kristen, I want to say thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy and you have beautiful kids and you are married. So it doesn't take to be a part of the NEDP or any of those programs or associations. You don't have to be divorced. And I'm not an advocate for divorce. I actually love relationship, partnership, and marriage. It's just that sometimes it's just there's a cut. There's time to go and to create a new possibility. And you are married and have three kids, right?
Yes.
and you love helping people, and collaborative attorney is definitely an aspect that I want to continue to develop with Michelle.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Kristen, have a great day and we'll talk soon.
Yes. Thank you. You too.